Welcome everyone to Cyvatar and Cysurance's webinar. Today we're talking about 7 reasons your cybersecurity insurance will last, featuring the 7 deadly sins. So some play on fun there on the word sins. We have some really great content that will be useful for you guys to go back and bring to your team and work on your cybersecurity insurance. So today we have Kirsten Bay from Cysurance. She's the CEO, and Corey White from Cyvatar, who's also the CEO of Cyvatar. So I'm going to hand it over to them and let them do introductions, and then we'll get right into it.
Thanks so much, Aileen. Kirsten, ladies first, we'll let you start with introductions.
Well, thank you very much, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Kirsten Bay, CEO and co-founder of Cysurance, and we also do Cysurance as a service, along with our security as a service friends, and trying to bring insurance and awareness around cyber threats in partnership with our security vendors.
Thank you. And I'm Corey White, CEO. Again, thank you. You already teed me up for cybersecurity as a service. We're really bringing what cybersecurity actually needed for a very long time. In my background, I've been doing cybersecurity for the last 25 years. And I've done services, I've done product, I've done all kind of different things. And so why don't I just combine services and product and get customers to a quick outcome and measure that and give them value instead of individual pieces of the puzzle. So that's what Cyvatar is. We're all in one cybersecurity taking care of our customers. And now have gotten even better with our partnership with Cysurance.
All right, so I guess it's up to me to define our problem for the day. So if people aren't aware, the cyber insurance market is really on fire right now, but not in a good way. The challenge that we have at the moment is that premiums are skyrocketing. The appetite, as it's called in the industry, the willingness to write policies for a variety of different verticals is shrinking tremendously, literally by the day. We actually are looking at cyber insurance a bit like we look at the stock market in terms of what's available for us on a daily basis, just because the risk has become so great. And certainly, if you all are reading the paper these days, it's really in the paper every single day. And we're talking about it every single day, both from a government perspective all the way down to a cyber risk perspective for the small and medium-sized enterprise. And it's interesting to note that in this last year, companies that are below 25 million in annual revenue have actually exceeded all other revenue classes in terms of claims filed for cyber insurance. So that's bigger than these Fortune 1000 and Fortune 100 companies. So it's really indicative of understanding that these risks are impacting all levels of businesses across the country and the world. So with those challenges, what does that mean? And what it means really from my perspective is that for the longest time, we've really used cybersecurity insurance, cyber insurance, to lead the risk conversation as opposed to security products particularly. And so what's happening now when people check these boxes and say, yes, I have this, I have that, apparently it's either not true or it's not configured properly, but there clearly is a problem in terms of the integration of security and insurance. And so what we really want to talk about today is how we not only help people get insured, but the risks that are posed to either decline of coverage or exclusions that might be hit because people aren't doing the right things. And certainly the insurance industry is moving in the direction where they are going to demand audits of networks to actually prove that the things that people say they have indeed are configured properly and in their environments.
That was a lot. I want to just dive into that and ask a few questions because this was new to me. When we sat down, so how I actually saw it and heard it is that the cybersecurity insurance industry back in the day, anybody could get it, right? Now they're clamping down and like, no, you can't, because we actually have our insurance with you as well. And so I remember the questions they were asking. They were like, are you a MSP? I'm like, no, we're not, because and some of you guys may not know, but there was a lot of attacks happening against MSPs specifically. And so insurance companies are like, I'm not going to insure MSP because all the hackers have been attacking them and going after all of their clients. And then the last thing that is really interesting to me is that when you said that the industry has changed so much that you have to jump through all these hoops, and you got to have MFA, and that's coming really, really quickly. And to me, MFA is just something everybody should have, but everybody doesn't have. So it's been a lot of changes in the industry in the last couple of years or so, right?
Oh, without question. And not even the last couple of years, last couple of weeks, literally.
Really?
Like
Yeah.
when SolarWinds happened, I got a call from Chubb, one of our insurance partners, and they said, we're adding a new question to your attestations that people have to check off whether or not they have SolarWinds in their environments. So it's literally changing by the day. And we see that when some of these big attacks happen, we'll get notices that there are now verticals like MSPs where insurance carriers are saying, no more, we don't have any more appetite. So, as an analogy, something that people are aware of, the wildfires that are happening all over the country, primarily in California, when we log on to our systems for the insurance carriers, there's a notice at the top of the marketplaces that say new zip codes added for non-bindable locations, which means they continually add zip codes where you can no longer offer homeowners insurance or even business owners insurance for high-risk areas. And this is a very similar thing. We're in this environment where it feels like we're very prone to wildfires in our industry. And so therefore, they're continually shrinking what they call their appetite to underwrite those risks.
Wow. All right, let's dive in. I could keep diving into the insight that you have.
It doesn't mean to be so scary. This is like insurance bud, but it doesn't mean to be that way. There are solutions to the problem is the good answer.
Yes, there absolutely are. We're going to go through some of those. So just high level for context, like I said in my introduction, we're cybersecurity as a service, because if you take all the things that Kirsten said are happening, these attacks that keep on increasing and getting worse, and everybody's a target nowadays, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But we needed a new business model for cybersecurity, so that's why we created what we created, because the traditional approaches were not working. And I'll talk more about how this applies to the 7 deadly sins, but we'll go to the next slide and start diving in here. Before we get into this, I had to kind of put my security head and then tie that with cybersecurity insurance and my understanding of it. So when you have any kind of risk in your organization, a few things you can do. You can just avoid it. You can mitigate it by putting some kind of control in place and lock it down, get it secure, or you can transfer it. And transfer it is like, okay, and a lot of companies did this, a few years ago, like, all right, we got cybersecurity insurance. We're not going to care about those risks anymore. We're just going to transfer it, and our insurance will cover it if that were to happen. What has changed is that you can't transfer the risk unless you've done proper mitigation and avoiding techniques. And so that's what the insurance is coming back and saying, is that, hey, you need to have these things in place before we're going to allow you to transfer. You can't say we're going to have no security, never patch, never remediate anything, and then just go and say, hey, we got insurance. So that's what has changed. Just want to lay that foundation a little bit. So again, I just described that, but again, I see it as a balance, right? That equation has changed. You actually have to fix things and remediate and have a secure environment and be able to prove that over time to get cybersecurity insurance. And that's what is changed in the scales. Okay. All right, let's get into these sins. So the first one here, this is near and dear to my heart. I've been talking about it for a very long time and over my years. So failing to install system and software updates and patches. Within the cybersecurity community, we all know we need to do patches. We need to update our systems, but we also are running businesses. And if you're running a business, you don't want to take anything down. You don't want to affect the network and affect the business negatively. So a lot of companies have gotten really hesitant to do that. But what has happened, how things have changed, whereas, you take ransomware, for example, again, all over the news. Ransomware, when it first started, it actually was just malware. You actually clicked on a link and something got downloaded and executed. But ransomware is a hack now. We probably should stop calling it ransomware, because the last thing they do is drop the ransomware. The first thing they do is hack into you. So with threat and vulnerability management, what hackers are doing is they first are hacking into your network. And if you've not patched anything, if you don't know what your assets are, you haven't patched anything, then you are easy prey. And the other thing that has changed is in the cybersecurity, industry, you think, oh, well, I'm not a bank, I don't have credit cards or PII or PHI or whatever, then you figure you're not a target. If you are a company and you have money, you are a target. I mean, so take, for example, what's happened, Colonial Pipeline and the meat company that got hacked. Nobody's thinking, why would a meat company need cybersecurity? Well, they do, because of ransomware. So that's what has changed. And so now we actually do need to patch our systems. On top of that, you need to continually scan our systems. What I say all the time is that cybersecurity is hygiene. And we haven't been treating it like it is hygiene. We've been treating it like it's a one-time activity, like it's a Patch Tuesday activity. It is a once-a-year pen test activity when new vulnerabilities are coming out every single day. So we actually have to continually do that. So this is one of the requirements that Kirsten's hearing from the insurance companies. Like, you have to do this. So again, it needs to be a continuous approach. So that's number one. I'm gonna go through two, and then I'll let you chime in your thoughts and insight, Kirsten. So non-compliance with regulatory and privacy frameworks. So if you have to be compliant with something, it used to be, companies, they were just trying to skate and get away with it and not have to do it because the enforcement of it wasn't there. And until something happened, once something happened, then they will ask, are you compliant with X, Y, and Z? And then once they find out, then they get fined. But there was no other, big hammer to make companies actually get compliant unless there was a business driver. So now what is happening with cybersecurity insurance is that they're actually saying, oh, well, you're in this industry, you need to be compliant, you need to have these pieces in place. So again, that is forcing companies to actually be compliant. And those are some best practices within compliance. I have some challenges with compliance, how it works. I'll be the first one to say compliance does not equal security, but it's a good checklist, it's a good start. It at least gets you on the path, but it isn't a one all be all for being secure. So Kirsten, please enlighten us.
Yes. Well, so one thing certainly about the patching is I saw a comment pop up that it should be a service level agreement between the insurer. Actually, for us in the programs that we run, it is a requirement that we have. We say commercially reasonable because sometimes people do need to sandbox to understand in larger environments whether it's going to have impact to systems. But commercially reasonable is 2 or 3 weeks. Some people run patches every 3 weeks depending on the size of their organization. But we certainly require that. The challenge on the insurance side, and this is really where the rub is in terms of full cyber liability programs, is that their job is not enforcement. Their job is transfer acceptance, right? That's what they do. So part of where we're trying to sit in our organization is to help build that bridge between what's required for that security hygiene piece so that we can set those parameters in place such that the insurers can understand that those environments are actually being managed properly. And then in respect to the compliance pieces, everyone now has to follow compliance rules. If you live in a state like California or New York, we have the New York Shield Act here in New York, where the Attorney General actually has the right to audit your systems for compliance, even if you've not sustained any sort of security incident. So you can be fined, even if you're just sitting in your office doing nothing. So these are things that people have to be aware of, that there are large swaths of, when people see compliance, like, oh, I'm not in healthcare, it's no big deal. Well, most states are adopting these same standards that have requisite fines.
Perfect, good insight. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, the inability to archive and mine data and forensic records to verify incident details. I've done a ton of incident response, and it's interesting the way things have evolved. Whereas doing forensics, coming in and doing forensics on servers or workstations or systems in data centers, that has changed. A lot has moved to the cloud, and frankly, I think that's a good thing. But again, how do you actually do forensics based upon what's in the cloud? So, from my perspective, what I think is one of the biggest challenges is a lot of companies don't have the capability to have forensic data coming from their cloud systems or have the ability to audit that. And if you can't, if something's happened, how do you prove what happened? And it's a new area, and it's been around forever. But I say it's a new area, but I don't know many companies that have the capability to look at their SaaS applications and figure out if an incident happened, because they don't have proper logs coming from those SaaS applications. There are quite a few security solutions that do it. We actually have listed a few here, but this is something that we got to think about. And I don't think most companies are even thinking about it as it relates to the cloud, let alone their traditional infrastructure networks. So this is definitely an area that needs to be addressed. Kirsten, tell me your insight.
Absolutely. And this is one of the big challenges that smaller organizations or totally cloud dependent organizations have. How do you prove you lost something? Usually we use log files and other things to be able to have that determination. How much was lost? Is it actually lost? And what are the damages? And that's how insurance enables us to be able to give you financial remuneration for the incident. And so if we can't capture that log data, it becomes really difficult. And so what we're seeing as a result of this is that the recovery expenses, and this is why insurance is getting so out of whack in cyber, is your actual loss. Let's say it's a ransom attack. Your ransom was $25,000. We figured that out, or we got it out, so we didn't have to pay it. But the recovery element is now becoming 10 to 15 times the original cost of the incident. So what could be a $25,000 or $30,000 loss becomes a $250,000, $350,000, $400,000 loss because of the time it takes to do forensic analysis, recovery, and then also business interruption costs because you're down for that period of time. So this really is a significant pain point in the insurance side as well.
Wow, how do people know? Like, because I'm just thinking, traditional exfiltration. We've done so much of it. We would see, okay, I can see the forensic log. This is where they FTP'd it out, and you would see that actually happen. But what is happening today is, especially companies that don't have multi-factor authentication on their cloud systems, these hackers are able to just log in. They're able to log in and access the data. And I don't think most people even know, because if you look like a authorized user doing authorized activity, they don't even know that these losses are happening until it's too late. And by the time it's too late, and that's when the ransomware hackers are dangling, hey, here's your data, we have it. And that becomes a problem.
Yes, big one for sure.
All right. Okay, so number 4, strongly unencrypted personalized PII. So it's interesting that there's still so much PII data that is not encrypted and not enforced to be encrypted. So many companies don't even know what their PII is. So we want to make sure that they have it. But why is that a big deal for insurance?
Well, one of the things, especially related to state law, California PCPA as an example, is that it used to be that in the old days, it would be big companies who had fines levied against them. Now, like in California, they have minimum damages. So no matter how little you are, they have a minimum damages amount that will be applied per record. So this becomes a completely different ball of wax here, because now you're sitting in a situation where no matter how big or small you have, how small you are, you will have a fine levied. And so these are the components that are covered often in the insurance policies. On the other hand, people are attesting that they are encrypting this data, that they are HIPAA compliant. Yes, I'm PCI compliant. And these are issues because when it comes down to it, and if they investigate and find that you weren't at all, there's the best efforts clause, but if you weren't at all, then you might have an issue where you won't be covered at all.
Wow. That's crazy. We put in our virtual CISO solution because if you don't know what you have, if you haven't done any kind of data classification, if you don't know where your PII lives, then it's very, very hard to make sure it's encrypted. Number 5 here, failing to back up data in a segregated offline solution. This is huge, huge, huge. We don't actually do backups for our customers. Most companies already have that in place. But what people don't realize is that, if they were to see a huge, indicator of compromise, is if you actually end up saying, why did our backups go offline? If I were at a company, my backups went offline randomly, that would scare the crap out of me, because that's the first thing that hackers do to make sure that they're going to get paid their ransoms. And so if you don't have proper backup, if it's not segregated from your network, if it's not offline, and we put multi-factor authentication as a big deal there as well. We've seen, the admin account that could log into, Windows is the same thing that admins the backup solution, which is absolutely ridiculous. People don't realize how important it is to have proper backups, because this is how the ransomware hackers ensure they're getting paid. They're going to go and kill your backups, because most people, back in the day, a few years ago, they say, oh, we got backups, we're not going to pay the ransom. But if you don't have backups, then you're forced to pay the ransom. And that's why this is such a big deal.
Yes, I call this the cyber seatbelt, right? That if you wear your seatbelt in your car, it protects you from a lot of bad things happening. And so your risk curve drops dramatically. This is, to me, the most important thing of all of them, is because I don't want to have it happen to me. And most people don't, right? So this, if it happens, this is the easiest way to recover and get back up and running. And oftentimes people don't understand what this means, and they don't understand that OneDrive, even though they do have multiple backups, that there can be ways for those to be compromised. That if you have something that's continually attached to your system that's backing up, auto save every time you do something, that is also at risk.
Wow. You want to talk a minute about what's happening with multi-factor authentication and how that's coming down the pipe?
Well, yes, it's the thing that it also is very significant in terms of protecting you. I think number 5 might be the most important of all the things, just because it really is the most preventative, or the ability to help you remediate. And multi-factor is just so important because it allows you to know when either the state change is occurring or that you can let people in. And so with Office 365, there's a built-in solution. And if you can just lock down your email accounts, especially if you're a smaller organization or a cloud-based organization, that is a huge step forward to preventing it. And so as Corey was saying, in kind of those brute force ways that people either go through privilege escalation, where they're trying to become Corey or the admin, or some other role, this would trigger a, hey, is this you question? And you can say, no, stop everything, right? And that's really a tremendous protection, and something that everyone's requiring. But again, they're not checking, but they're going to start checking and auditing. And if that wasn't in place and it wasn't triggered at the time of an attack, again, you could see that there could be a decline in coverage.
Yeah, 100%. I'm specifically, I am not an admin of anything in my organization for that reason. I don't want that responsibility. So yeah, okay, we'll move on. Okay, number 6, not using endpoint detection and response. I left EDR in there. Anybody that knows me, my last company was a company called Cysurance, and I ran the services, managed services, and the thing was getting to prevention. Excuse me for a minute while I go on a rant here. But when when people say EDR, what they're really saying is that, okay, on my endpoint, I'm going to have something that's going to detect when something bad happens and send me an alert. Okay. That's the equivalent of saying, I'm going to have an alert on my phone that tells me when somebody breaks into my house. But I'm going to leave my front door open. I'm actually not trying to stop the person walking in. I just want to detect when they walk in. And so this is a huge, huge flaw in the way we're approaching cybersecurity as a industry, because most endpoint protection solutions, and a little bit of my history before that, I was at McAfee for 8.5 years or so. So I know quite a bit about how endpoint protection solutions typically work. So at the end of the day, if you're taking an EDR approach, you're saying it's okay for an incident to happen. And furthermore, as it relates to ransomware types of attacks, with ransomware, the minute that it executes and it gets detected, then you are also encrypted. So it's just too late. I strongly recommend you getting whatever solution you have, getting it into where you're able to be into a lockdown preventative state, and it is actually blocking more than it actually is allowing to execute. Because that's one of the major challenges. And I talked to a lot of non-technical, people that say, hey, Corey, I got hit with ransomware, but I had antivirus. And they don't realize that antivirus, something that was created 30 years ago by John McAfee, and a few others, God rest his soul, that's not going to stop something that the hackers are using today. It's one of our associates here used it's like having the mall cop trying to stop some sophisticated hacker from getting in. The mall cop's not going to be able to do it. You need something as sophisticated as what they have. So to me, there's a major flaw. These attacks are going to continue happening if we have really, really basic antiquated solutions that are not, even if you did have a really good solution, but if it's not even configured to prevent and block the attack, then it's still going to execute. So you have to have that in place to stop some of these attacks that are happening. And this, to me, this is a big one for me, because it's your last line of defense, and you take everybody's on the cloud, everybody's working remote. So your firewall in some cases is your endpoint protection. And so if that is not actually in a lockdown preventative blocking state, then that's malware will be dropped, it'll be allowed to execute, and it's game over for you. So, all right, rant is over, Kirsten, but that's my perspective on this.
Well, that's right. I mean, it is closing the barn door after the horse is out, and certainly it's useful. It's a tool, right? But like all these things, they're tools, and you need an arsenal of tools to both prevent and deal with the mitigation. And oftentimes, endpoint is good for the post event of what was it and the forensic analysis. But Corey's 100% right, and so the threat and vulnerability analysis and those other tools, they're all really important for security hygiene. But again, if we have our cyber seatbelt and we're able to have MFA and backups, these are more layered approaches as opposed to preventative approaches. And and the notion that they stop breaches and that's all you need, there is no such thing as a silver bullet for cybersecurity. And so anyone who tells you that is a snake oil salesman. So there's my rant.
100% agree. It definitely isn't a silver bullet, but I would want to have, like you said, multiple seat belts around me and airbags, everything protecting me.
Right.
But what we're doing is we're using legacy antivirus. We're not patching on a continuous basis. We're not using multi-factor authentication. We aren't locking down our backups. And then when we get hacked, we're like, why did this happen? Yeah, it's ridiculous. So let's go to our last one, number 7 here. Lack of employee training and corporate governance. 100%. The number one firewall should be the person. Because if you're not able to determine what a phishing attack looks like, and some of them are really sophisticated, I personally blame social media. Because if you look at anybody's social media, you can figure out what they're into. You can figure out, this person just was in Vegas at Black Hat last week. Corey, how was Circa? And somebody could send me a spear phishing attack, and they could have a lot of details about what I did last week at Black Hat. And it might make me want to click on it, but it goes back to the layers, right? If I did click on it and give up some information, then you got to have the multi-factor authentication. You got to have all these other layers stopping it from happening. But the first thing you got to do is have the security awareness training. Because again, as I talk to a lot of our clients are non-technical, they just want to, hand off cybersecurity. You got to take care of it. And so when we talk to them about some of these types of attacks that will be coming their way and are coming their way, they just aren't literate about it. They don't know what a spear phishing attack looks like and what people can use against them, what they should or should not post externally that could be used against them. So this is absolutely huge. We obviously offer a managed cybersecurity awareness training solution to meet this requirement, but this is, in my opinion, the number one thing you should have. You need to have a mindset of not trusting. And it sucks because in life, we want to trust people, but in the cyber world, you can't. So it's this crazy, balance that you have to strike in the cyber world.
Well, that's right. And there's the old saw, right? People, process, and technology. It's not technology, people, and process, right? It's to your exact point. And so, the other piece of it in the corporate governance side is around things that even try to prevent, like funds transfer fraud from a business email compromise. Hey, the CFO is being requested by the CEO to send $50,000, except for that's a spoofing email, right? Do you have process in place that you have dual authentication where two people have to approve wires to make sure that they're actually appropriately being sent? So those are two components that really help both the training, but the process pieces are the ones that can also help prioritize what types of training are the most effective in preventing these things. And so these are really key elements. Invoice fraud, all of these things are preventable. And we had one once where I had my CFO send me a note and go, "Did you really want to send this wire? You never send things from your iPad," and said, "Send from your iPad." And so I just wanted to make sure this was you. And I was like, "Really? That's what you noticed? You didn't notice that they wrote Kristen instead of Kirsten? Like, really?" But at least you got it, right? And so these are the things that are really, really important for just basics.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'll give an example. It's probably 2008, 2009 when the business email compromise attacks started really, really happening. We did an incident here in California where this business owner, they fell for it, and it was actually pretty fascinating. They'd made the request for a transfer, and so when the transfer happened, it got transferred to another bank. So from one banking institution to another. And it was interesting when we did the forensics, neither bank actually cared because they're like, well, that's a legal transfer. And then when they got transferred to this other state, somebody came in the same day and pulled the money out, and it was gone. It was nothing that they could do. Everything was legal in that transaction, and it was approved by that individual company. And I remember thinking to myself, why would anybody rob a bank the traditional way anymore? Why would you go in and stick them up with a gun anymore? That's probably why that stopped happening. I think it stopped happening, but that's why I wouldn't do that. It's so much easier to do it via business email compromise, as you just described. And that's why, the cybercrime is really, really increasing, because you can't even find the individual who did it. You don't even have to go in and walk into an institution. You can just sit at home or in some other country and just hack away.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. All right.
Guys.
So we had to throw this in here because we are failing as a cybersecurity industry, and I hate to fail. That's one of the reasons why I rebuilt a new business model. But you can Google around, and there's so many stats that shows the increase of attacks year over year that are happening. And that's why, again, I'd love to hear your insight from a cybersecurity insurance perspective. With these increasing attacks, it's like they've had to change their tactics as to how they insure companies, as you described earlier in this webinar.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you put 19 and 20 out here, you would see this exponential increase, because what's really exacerbated the problem is at least we had people contained in a network environment. Now you have people distributed all over the place working from home, and then have varieties of network security in their own homes and in their own routers. So and also they're disconnected from their group. So when it comes to things like employee awareness training, one of the big challenges is if you're in your pod where you're in your offices all together, you can, hey, did you get that email? Is that a right email? And also we have a lot of anxiety over benefits and pay. And so the hackers have been sending a lot of emails around benefits packages and what's happening with viruses and things where people, their initial reaction is to click on that because it's important to their livelihood. So we are seeing that as another layer of vulnerability. So these are things that are really driving big changes. And frankly, these changes in the insurance world for cyber were coming anyway, because you can see that even before all this craziness happened, they were still completely on the rise. And so there was already awareness that things needed to change. But ultimately, as Corey says, with all of the security companies we have out there, we're failing, right? We are not, and we're not holding the product companies accountable, which is why we at Cysurance want to help shift that burden back to how do we help guarantee products and support that piece of it to really understand how effective these products are. And if they're effective, then we need to be able to be then offering those people discounts when they want cyber insurance, because we understand what those products actually do and how effective they are.
That's awesome. So you see at the discounts, like, is this like at home, if you have an alarm system and all that, you get an extra discount? Oh, that's cool.
That's right. So that's why I'm like, you need to wear your cyber seatbelt, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, and then you got your airbags and your lane drift, like all this stuff. All of these things reduce risk and impact, and that's the key here. And the stat that I came across the other day, because I was curious, well, how many cyber attacks are there in a day? Well, the going rate right now is 2,200 successful cyber attacks occur in the United States. It's a decently high number. So no wonder we have this issue with cyber insurance rates. But there are 16,400 car accidents a day. So it was a totally robust car insurance market. But the reason is because the severity and impact, no pun intended, of those car accidents, there's a wide variety. So lots of fender benders, and not even 1% are totals in terms of what those impacts are to the risk curve. This is what we need to be able to do for our industry as well, is we need to have more fender benders and fewer totals, and how we get there is to really understand how products can help reduce and mitigate that risk.
Wow, that was fantastic. So is it safe to say that we're just not a mature industry yet?
Yeah, we're just crashing our cars all the time, like totaling the car. Exactly. Our cyber car is totaled constantly in the superhighway.
Okay, well, definitely the world has changed, and we have to change as a cybersecurity industry and be able to, again, stop crashing our cars, because we're not doing the right things. And the title of this is the 7 deadly sins, and most companies aren't doing those basics. Like, they don't have the seatbelt, they don't have the airbags, so they could potentially total out their car and hurt themselves as well. So we have to change this industry. So I appreciate you spending this time with me so that we could kind of get this word out, because the people need to know that these are the challenges that are happening out there.
But it's possible. And this is the thing that I think is the most important, and why I really love our partnership, is because it's solvable. And I think part of the reason why it's not even reticence on the part of companies that I don't care about that stuff, it's they hear so much of it, it sounds infinitely complex and infinitely scary. Where do you even start, right? And I think that's the element where we as a community need to be much better, is to say, I know it seems infinitely complex and difficult, and I know that the cyber insurance market doesn't even want you anymore. Like, gosh, why would anybody want to even deal with that? But the fact is that the digital world is the future of all of our companies. It's what we have that empowers us to do what we do. And it is entirely manageable. And it's up to us to help our companies understand what's prioritized. MFA backups, if you don't do anything, just do that, right? But do things, and we can help you understand what really is going to help you get the most bang for your buck, so that you can solve these problems and it is manageable. And I think that's the most important message too.
Very well said. Wow. So you just summarized our partnership and why it makes sense. Tell us a little bit about 360 Protect and Cysurance and how you're solving these problems.
Well, we have two product solutions. And so certainly the 360 product that you see here is based on what we call our service assurance service guarantee program. And what it does is it ties to our technology partners who have the right security controls in place. And so we offer a $500,000 guarantee for those products. And so it's kind of like anything that you think of. I was talking today, even my umbrella has a warranty, right? So we understand what these things are capable of doing in terms of helping people mitigate the impact of what's happening in their environments if something were to go wrong. But what we're really trying to prove with this product, that not only is there initial protection in place for customers, but also that we can help protect against losses because what we have in place is mitigating significant financial impact that would be driven by not doing the right security hygiene things. And so what our 360 Protect product really is about is partnering with technology companies who have the right controls so that we can then offer this guarantee, but things still happen, right? Someone still runs a red light and hits a car. So that's for, when something really goes wrong, we're there to help support. And then also because we have these solutions in place, we partner with several insurance carriers who then offer very nice, substantial 30, 40% discounts on cyber liability insurance because now they understand that that environment's audited, that they know it's actually going to reduce that risk so that if something really catastrophic happens, which it can, then there's that backstop as well. But what we're trying to do is show the market that we can get more vendors, that we can take care of those low-level impacts, get remediation costs covered, and get people back up and running because you don't want to be down. The worst thing for all of us is if a business is down for more than a couple hours or a day, and that's really what we're trying to help solve.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I love the way it ties into what we're doing because our customers that have threat and vulnerability management subscriptions where we're remediating them, getting them to a nice clean state, continuously patching and getting them clean. On top of that, with the secure endpoint management, where we actually are getting them to a lockdown and blocking state, those customers, and we just finalized this partnership, last month, we got everything lined up. And I requested from my back-end team, give me a list of every single one of our customers that have those two solutions, because for free, to them, they get Cysurance, they get the 360 Protect solutions. So that list will be coming over shortly to you so that our customers are automatically having that guarantee as a backup. And what we've built here is a full solution for everyone because our mindset is, like you said, you're not going to have the technical expertise. It's very, very hard to know everything about everything in cybersecurity. So what it's not about the individual products anymore. It's not about the individual services. It's about the solution and the outcome. So that's what we bundled together into our easy subscriptions so that we can get our customers to that outcome in 90 days or less, and then maintain that again, because it's the hygiene that matters. Yes. And to your point, I love the fender bender analogy. It's okay if you get a little fender bender, but your car is not totaled. It can be repaired and you can go on, through your through your days. So that's how we've partnered. I'm super excited to bring this to our customers moving forward. Lots more that will come from this partnership. I can't wait to promote that because there's so much value that our customers just get just by choosing the right solutions and not having to worry about, hey, are we protected? If something happens, do we have any kind of guarantee backing us up? Now they have that automatically. So do we have any questions in chat or any, we have a few minutes, I think, Aileen.
We do, yeah, some Q&A came in, so let me just get those pulled up. And if you guys have any questions that you haven't submitted yet, just feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A box. Okay, so first question, does HIPAA carry additional requirements beyond general PII that can jeopardize my coverage? If so, what are they and how do I ensure I'm meeting them?
Well, that's certainly the encryption piece is a big part of it. There are other elements there are some training elements to HIPAA as well for the full certification. And people who tell you that there is the endpoint to HIPAA certification, it's not entirely true. It's always a process, but certainly it's important to look at the guidances. But the key thing is personally identifiable information, as well as the PHI, the personal health information, private health information. Both need to be encrypted. That is step one for everything. And then, of course, there are the other elements that go in with being HIPAA certified, or at least having compliance with HIPAA that follow on behind that. And part of that is also employee training. That's a big part of it as well in terms of handling that data and segregating that data.
Thanks, Kirsten. Corey, anything you wanted to add on that before we move on to the next one?
No, we're good.
Okay, cool. The next one, how might a federal privacy law affect current state-based ones like CCPA?
Well, that's a great question, and one that people are trying to understand right now. I mean, we certainly are watching Europe when it comes to GDPR. When we typically fall down these things, state has precedent over federal, and right now we're driving most of those federal standards, with the exception of PCI and HIPAA, and also some of the SEC requirements for registered investment advisory groups for people who are under the SEC guidances. And so typically then, like a CCPA for California, a New York Shield might handle then everything that falls outside the purview of where those people are falling. But while compliance isn't security, certainly those help you get to a path where it's understanding that if you are HIPAA certified, then certainly you can probably already meet the threshold for a CCPA or a New York Shield Act, because the thresholds are a bit lower than for what those federal standards are.
Thanks, Kirsten. And the next one, what are the pros and cons of cloud versus offline storage?
That one's for you.
Yeah, I'll take that. It is interesting. It's for me personally, I think companies, I like cloud because it has the flexibility. But you have to have the MFA, you have to have it locked down, because then a lot of people, like Kirsten mentioned, the OneDrive conversation. You have that OneDrive, but if I hack in, I get to your Microsoft Office 365 admin account, then I get to your OneDrive and all your shared information. So I can easily cut that connection. But if you have an offline stored backup, then you're still good. It is not something that a hacker can get into and get access to. So I've seen some companies that have quite a bit of capability around how they've done their backups. With the multi-factor authentication, it's stored in the cloud and offline, especially for certain types of data. You really, there's some experts in backups that you really should talk to, because I've talked to them people, and I'm not one of them, but my thing is make sure you can't get hacked and somebody can't use those passwords to disable it. That happens all the time.
And doing malware scans of those offline backups is also really important, because as you're doing your backups every single day, it can be, to Corey's point, that it's not just someone is dropping in and doing their bad thing right away. They actually could be in reconnaissance mode, which means that they're dropping malware in your environment without your knowledge. So making sure that there are continuous scans, because when you try to flip on that offline storage, when there is an attack, it can actually then trigger the encryption and the offline as well. So making sure that the MFA is on all those is super important, and also continually scanning all of them for vulnerabilities and malware.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's everything. So we recorded this, everyone, so we'll send it out to you guys shortly after we end the webinar. And I'll have Corey and Kirsten drop their email addresses in the chat if anyone wants to follow up to them with questions. And as always, you can visit our websites to learn more about both of our companies and reach out to us with anything. Oh, it looks like we have one more question. Rodney. Hey, Rodney. You just have to unmute. If you want to ask a question. Looks like he's muted.
There he is.
Yeah.
There he is. You got me? No, I said I came in a little late. Can you send me the information also?
Absolutely. Yep. I'm gonna send it out to everyone that attended.
Okay,
so
great.
You're all set.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And then we have one more question from Caesar. Your solution is a bundle. You purchase one or the other, or you purchase one or the other, sorry.
Yeah, great question, Caesar. So what we've done, every single one of our customers, if you go to our website, you can sign up for free. It includes free CIS 20 gap analysis, because then we'll figure out where your gaps. If you say, hey, we're continually scanning and patching our environment every single day, we're good, but we don't have endpoint protection, or we're using the cheapest endpoint protection solution we've ever that's out there. And so our recommendation was like, hey, you're good with threat and vulnerability management, like you got that. What your biggest gap, show this in your CIS 20 gap analysis, that'll show up as red, and we'll say you need secure endpoint management, and say if another gap that you have is say MFA, and we have two versions of MFA. Just to talk quickly about that, I call it poor man's MFA. If you're all cloud, then we can just set up with your help there your cloud systems like Office 365, Slack, Salesforce, everything has it built into it, and we'll just help configure that for you for free. But if you're a larger enterprise, and we do have those customers, we use Okta to get them fully locked down and secured. So we handle it in both ways. So the short version of it is we just choose whatever solution is your biggest gap, and we fill that. Our goal is not to force you to buy the whole thing, not to force you to buy anything. We want to know what your gaps are, fill those so that you actually are secure.
Thanks, Corey. Caesar, feel free to reach out to us if you have more in-depth questions. We can set up some time to meet with you. All right, I think that we'll close out here. Thanks everyone for coming, and we'll be in touch with the recording. And thank you to the Cysurance team for co-hosting with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.